Hey everyone, welcome in to the Rochford Files, coming to you off of a postponement of last night's stream. It's your host, that's kind of between the coast, coming to you from the Mile Highland City. This is Andrew Rochford, and this is live from the garden of YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. And as always, if you're on the YouTube side of things, please go like the stream, share it where you can, subscribe. Then, if you're on Twitch, please click the follow button. Then, if you're watching on Twitter right now, I'd suggest going to either YouTube or Twitch to do what I just said, please. Then, also, what else? That's the important thing going into the stream. Most of the stuff was supposed to be done last night, but felt under the weather. Cold, quick little cold came on, but feeling better enough to do the stream tonight. Because, as y'all know, fuck it, we doing it live. We doing it live. And I actually barely decided to follow through with this like a hour ago, to be honest. When I saw Uncle Warren tweet the link out, that's when I was like, you know what, I can do this. I mean, it won't be at 8 p.m. Eastern like I had left it scheduled on the StreamYard, but 9 p.m. I'll get it then. So, unlike yesterday's show, now my first segment now has a pretty ironic video from a platform that many of the good independent left media platforms have been critical of, which is the Russia referendum that has been taking place over the past few days. Then also, another thing I added in was the news coming out of Cuba with the whole codifying of family rights. Those are a couple of things that are a bit different for tonight's show, other than adding in some random stuff from NBA Media Day, since the majority of the NBA had it today. I may work those in depending on time, but definitely getting that Ime Udoka story covered finally, as there is a bit of a continuation on Boston's Media Day. So let's start here with this video. Then I'll get into the Hey Kelly, do you put habaneros with it? Because I would personally recommend putting like 10 to 15 to make it nice and spicy. I hope you're not a lightweight on spice, by the way. But let's start here. Which is ironic, considering that if I covered this last night, I would have completely missed this.
Finally, I have to make sure that we highlight this. Politically making some big grounds by the Russians to try and lay territorial claim to these eastern regions in Ukraine. Let's put this up there on the screen. Russian authorities literally going door to door, and in some cases with Kalashnikov rifles in order to, quote, collect votes for the referendum. I truly wonder what the
Sure, everyone felt
results.
really free to vote
I
their
wonder what
conscience.
number that they're going to go with. You know, you always, usually they go with like 70, something like that. So like, well, there was some dissent,
Some
but it was
dissent.
overwhelming.
See, we allowed them
Yeah.
to vote how they
Right.
wanted to
If
vote.
you go 98, then everybody just knows you're a clown and you look like some African dictator. But if you go with 70, everybody's like, all right.
Everybody already knows
Okay,
you're a clown on this.
listen, it's clown worthy regardless. And that's what's happening here. Police arrest.
And it's very easy for Sauger and Crystal Ball to have this type of take because they're just in their Washington, D.C. studio, and they just, this is one of those moments where they're falling right in line with the mainstream, corporate media agenda here. Yes, I am very crazy, Kelly, and I do mean it when I say that 10 to 15 habaneros in it makes it very nice and spicy. But jalapeno is like meets the baseline, but I'd recommend adding at least one since you say you're a wussy, by the way.
Also hundreds of people in Ukraine who tried to protest. Actually, some of the people in these regions could now be mobilized for this conscription and be thrown against their own countrymen, which is insane when you consider that.
That is
and
insane.
Look, you've got military installed officials by Moscow that are organizing these referendums. They'll probably release the votes, whenever they find it most strategic. But as people point out, first of all, these are war-torn regions. Half the people who were pro-Ukraine, they left to go back to the safe areas of Ukraine.
Yes.
So it's already ludicrous. Number two, the vote itself cannot be trusted whenever you literally have people going door to door, the military and Russian installed authorities. They are trying to do this, however, to legitimize these regions in the eyes of the Russian constitution, like they did with Crimea, to then lay and start this as a war of defense.
You would think that actual independent journalists that we have in Russia would actually be able to confirm that this is true, but from what I'm seeing from Fiorella Isabel or Eva Bartlett is neither of them are confirming anything that Sagar is saying in this whole reference of it being fake.
And not of offense. So
yeah,
if
we're just
these
defending
regions,
our territory.
They go, hey, we had a vote. They said they want to be part of us. We're just defending you. And the other reason that matters is to tie it into the first block, which is that the Russians, and Putin specifically, recently updated his own nuclear doctrine to say that they would use nuclear weapons to defend the territorial integrity of the Russian Federation. And remember, territorial integrity is in the eye of the beholder, as in what they believe to be their territory, not necessarily what we believe to be their territory.
Yes.
So that remains the case too.
And to tie it back to the original discussion about nukes, Putin made a lot of waves when he expanded the sort of Russian nuclear doctrine to include defending territorial integrity just in advance of these referendums. So it's very clear the threat here. Basically, we are laying claim to these areas. We are saying these are now part of Russia. We are holding these sham referendums to give some fig leaf of a justification for why we're doing that. And now if you breach our territory, we have, put this nuclear threat out there. So it is a very, very dangerous situation. And it is insane to think about what you were saying that, the other piece of this is, okay, now that we're claiming you're part of Russia, you're also subject to the same draft that the whole rest of the country is. So people who are in that region who are, pro-Ukrainian nationalists could be forced into being drafted, and
you're probably the first ones to go.
Yeah, that's right.
Basically, you face the gun at home or you face the gun on the front line. I cannot imagine.
Absolutely.
Situation, but it is one they have put their own people in many, many times, and in fact, those are people, the far-flung regions of Russia we discussed, and although those are always the ones who suffer.
And this is very typical of any establishment-based narratives that you're hearing here. They do not believe that the people in these regions are actually capable of thinking for themselves and voting in favor of the way that it's going. And the fact that, in addition to that, they're talking about the other point of Ukraine. Well, Crystal focused on that, how you know, they're either going to be at threat in their home or on the front line. And as I say, if the United States and several of the other NATO countries weren't getting involved in making this worse, then guess what? This thing could have already been resolved in a more diplomatic manner or in a more better, more ethical way of not getting involved in the affairs of other countries. And if Ukraine happens to fail on its own merits, then it fails on its own merits. And the whole arguments that are being made here change if the United States isn't involved.
Most at the hands of the leaders in Moscow.
Yeah.
And generally, their lives are considered completely expendable.
Yeah. You're talking about places that during the winter hit like negative 90 degrees Fahrenheit.
Some of them are literal reindeer hunters. It's not like actual occupation.
Where when they're like, you can't send our men to this war, they're like, we will literally freeze to death. If one of the women they interviewed was like, my son hasn't finished the floor in our house because it got flooded over the summer, and my daughter-in-law is pregnant and she's got little kids. We literally don't know how we're going to make it through the winter. That is what they're being subjected to. Cable news is ripping us apart, dividing the...
This is the funny part here is they really did another segment that sounds highly indistinguishable from corporate cable news and essentially sounded just like them. As y'all know, Sagar Enjeti is part of the Hussein Institute, which is a neocon think tank. And as you'll see, he's not really opposed to war in the least. The only thing that makes Sagar a bit different than some of your right-wingers is him being more open to populism, but when it ultimately comes down to it, it's essentially fake because there's hardly a genuine populist right, especially if they're still pro-war. And I think being anti-war is a very important part of that. But now we'll go to people who've actually been on the ground and see how it contrasts. Fiorel Isabel of RT and the Convo Couch. 50,000 Moscovites rallied to support the referendum. Westerners don't realize the whole reason this conflict's happening is because Ukraine bombed Donbass for 8 years when they voted to be independent. Ukraine didn't like it and bombed them again. This was a long time coming. As you can see right there, it's the dogs, the NAFO dogs, will try to say this is staged, but you cannot stage that many people coming out in support like this, as you can see here. And it's just another example of how the U.S. establishment does not like whatsoever when there's a vote that takes place in the way that they do not like it to go. And they delegitimate which is why you see so many people calling it a sham. A lot like the way in the global south when people in countries like Peru, Nicaragua, Chile all vote in a way against the puppet installed fascist that that the U.S. tries to push through, and the success rate is they don't get it through very often. Then next, someone who's even more closer to that cover, to like danger areas, uh, which is Eva Bartlett, someone whose life has been threatened by. She's been on the Ukrainian hit list. As you can see, that doesn't look like a very threatening uh, soldier right there. And once again, the NAFO dogs will say that this is staged. And unlike, and if it was actually a sham, you would actually hear like some observers, like outside of the NATO-based countries, trying to validify those U.S. corporate media claims. But as you're seeing right here, it's just not adding up. And it also goes to show you how like terribly off that Crystal Ball and Sagar and Jetty are in their coverage of this. And why they're so useless when it comes to covering foreign policy, because that's when it's actual corporate media, and very much the same as you would hear from the CNN or MSNBC. And the only way that they're a bit different is because they do less manufacturing of consent for establishment Democrats and Republicans. That's really all. Other than that, they may like do focus a few more segments towards like uh, populist based policies, but overall, it's really not all that different. But someone who isn't afraid to stick their neck out on the line over this conflict, by the way, Roger Waters. Even though this was announced like a month ago, they just barely, uh, media outlets started to report on it a couple days ago. The Pink Floyd co-founder Roger Waters has canceled concerts planned in Poland, amid outrage over his stance on Russia's war against Ukraine, Polish media reported Saturday, which is not a surprise given that the fact that there are going to be certain countries who are not going to be very welcoming to the stand that Roger Waters is taking when it comes to the proxy war between Russia and Ukraine. And it's dumb that there's people who thinks that's supporting fascism when you're not paying attention to the ways that Ukrainian President Zelensky's fascist, banning opposition parties, opposition media, as blocking organizing for worker organizing and protesting type stuff. And it's the irony of saying that, calling what we believe propaganda while pushing propaganda, while proving that you believe propaganda. See, I know that there was another big Czech quote here. He has a pretty damn successful tour. I think he's pretty relevant right now, and there's a lot of people who like his anti-war, anti-imperialist messages. It just as you can see, the liberal meltdown here from so many people who have not been able to break through the cognitive dissonance, and we're now just over 7 months into this shit. But let's go into like a better news as we go to Cuba for that. And it's going to show you another way that the United States is behind. So Cuba legalizes same-sex marriage in historic referendum. Cuba has legalized same-sex marriage after Cubans voted in favor of a family code that increased protections for minorities on the island, the county's National Electoral Council announced on Monday. The Electoral Council said 74.1% of those eligible to vote in Sunday's national referendum had turned out to cast their ballot, with 94% of the votes counted as of 9 a.m. Eastern on Monday morning. 3.9 million plus have voted in favor and 1.9 million against, signaling an overwhelming support for the new law. The new family code extends greater protection to women, children, and the elderly, as well as allowing LGBTQ couples to marry and adopt children. For decades, the LGBTQ people in Cuba faced official discrimination on the communist-run island. In the 1960s, after Fidel Castro took power, according to many gay people were sent out to government work camps alongside political dissidents. Though homosexuality was legalized in Cuba in 1979, many gay men and women said they faced open discrimination. Mariela Castro, the daughter of former Cuban President Raul Castro, has openly advocated through a government-funded Center for Improved Rights for Gays, Lesbians, and Transgender People. But the push for greater equality faced stiff opposition from both outside and within the Cuban government. In 2018, Cuba legislators abandoned provisions that would have legalized same-sex marriage amid fears that a homophobic backlash would have lower turnout for a referendum to approve a new constitution. The following year, Cuban police broke up a peaceful LGBTQ rights parade, saying the marchers did not have permission to hold the rally. Cuba's growing evangelical community, in particular, had only advocated against improving the family code, but in the weeks before the referendum, the Cuban government made a full court press in favor of the new family code. Across state-run media arguing the new code is proof of the island's now more than 6 decades old revolution is capable of adapting to the times. Hey, WCSN, what's up, man? I'm in and out. Rain is on the way. Uh-oh. You better hurry up, buddy. You don't want to be caught up in all that. Nice, dry, and clear here in Denver, by the way. So this goes to show you how the United States tries to call Cuba this authoritarian dictatorship. But do real authoritarian dictatorships actually do stuff like approve the rights of their people with the further protections for same-sex marriages and allowing LGBTQ couples to adopt children? I don't think so. And this is where we are at right now in the United States, is that same-sex marriage is very much in danger of being rolled back in the same way that the Supreme Court has rolled back Roe versus Wade. And the fact that there's liberals out there who still believe the Democrats are eventually going to follow through and make it happen are clowns of the highest order. Oh man, WCSN. They absolutely melt down when you point out the high literacy rate. Look at what happened to Bernie Sanders when he did it. And he's barely moderate when you take all his politics into consideration. Don't forget the healthcare system either. Well ahead of the healthcare system in the United States, given that they have more like cures for stuff that don't exist here. But there's a good reason for that, as I mentioned, is because it's not profitable for Big Pharma to allow for to allow those to come through, and they probably have been behind the game and haven't came up with their own version, which let's be honest, people are honestly going to be less trustworthy of it in comparison to just working with Q and asking what their things are. But that's one of the biggest problems with the world, is how uncollaborative that we are. Because the absolute collaborative effort, and we could see like quite a bit of progress that's unimaginable, that we're just trying to get to the point of fighting against how backwards things are. And their medicine. Last thing the United States cured was polio. Yet polio is starting to break out again for some reason. Like 70 years ago. And their treatments since. They have at least 2 cancer cures. I believe Danny Haifong said it was like 3 or something when he brought those up like a couple months ago. But it also goes to show you how far behind the United States is. you've still got way too many people eating through the words of Joe Biden. The Twitter account, I believe last Thursday, uh, Joe said this, which I am working on bringing up on the screen right now. Here's what the Twitter account of Joe Biden said last Thursday. No, it's Friday. If you give me 2 more Democratic senators and Democrats keep the House, I promise you we will codify Roe versus Wade. And we will once again make Roe the law of the land. We will once again protect a woman's right to choose. Very much right, so. And the longer that people continue to trust the words of politicians rather than their actions, then we're going to continue to be fighting from behind constantly over and over again. I mean, look, if we could just go back to 92 and 20% of people made that big third party vote. And now, if those people stood committed voters instead of falling in line for Bill Clinton, we could be in a different place right now in certain aspects. But since so many of those people who were 20% Ross Perot voters just fell right back in line for Bill Clinton, that just meant that the leverage that was potentially had at the time was completely surrendered. And voting blue in these upcoming midterm elections is not going to do anything to change the situation because they're still going to. This is just going to be another future broken promise of the president, just like the public option, the $15 minimum wage, $2,000 checks, and that's intentional. They sucker you in with the weakest things that are the few weak things that seem like they're left of center. And the longer that people settle for it is the longer that they're going to continue to be suckers when instead of getting out of that abusive relationship. Because Cuba, by the way, has an actual democracy. But as we know, the United States doesn't like any non-capitalist country a country who doesn't want to be capitalist, by the way, voting the ways that their elections are ran. Because I say this because the sanctions and the imperialism make it very hard to do socialism in the way that they want it done, but Cuba has shown that they can thrive in spite of the stranglehold that the United States has had on them for over the past 60 plus years. And this is a big moment, and I think we should go through some of the tweets on Cuba real quick, because I do like to feature some of those. And there's still people in the same way that they believe that the Russia's referendums were a sham. They're also trying to say that these are also ones because they still have this like false belief that if you're a bit better on social issues, that you can that being an imperialist colonizing apartheid power is okay, and it's much in the same way that people try to justify what Israel does to Palestine, because Israel is supposedly better on LGBTQ issues, when reality is the actions that they're taking and imperialist empire power like the United States is worse compared to being a bit more conservative on social issues and being and for the people who uh, think violence is okay just because a country isn't as socially left as you would like, absolutely not acceptable, because there's always room for uh, people to make progress on being socially conservative, and you just saw the result of that in Cuba. And there's probably going to be more countries who are going to follow suit here and outflanking the United States and further making them look bad. Is there anything else? Oh yeah, good comrade. Cuban comrade right here. Liberals are trying so hard to spin Cuba legalizing gay marriage as somehow bad and so dumb. Would definitely agree. Do they not remember that that's part of what happened to get gay marriage legalized here? 66% approved of this, by the way. And this is where a big gap of progress is, where the Cuba elections are actually better to compared to the United States. We don't get to vote on Constitution like they do in Cuba. And guess what? And another thing they got is things that go through their Senate, they have to be voted on and approved by the people. Which is why the idea of like voting for Congress here is such a sham, because they do not have to work in your interest whatsoever. They could just pass whatever shit they want and not give you any crumbs. Kelly, the Michael Moore movie, when he took people down to Cuba to get basic health care, made me cry, and I don't cry in movies. What's sad is for the documentaries that Michael Moore has made is the fact that he doesn't get that he should be one of the big people voices in terms of pulling people away from this two-party system. rather than reinforcing it. But you want to talk about illegitimate elections? The structure of the way things are ran here are illegitimate as fuck, man. The fact that our Senate can just pass corporate giveaways left and fucking right, and the people are powerless. Then they also rig the elections to protect the worst of the fucking worst people. And y'all think we could still vote our way to better things? There used to be a time where we had an opportunity to do that. But we could argue that the older generations like Boomer and Gen X, by the way, went along to go along too much when it came to voting. And also, I think suppressing political discussion was another big thing that helped make things worse in this country, rather than like being more open to discourse, even though things are still getting worse. But that's because of being so far behind the eight ball, so to speak. But that right there is an example of what could have happened here if this political system wasn't completely bought out and corrupted. And there's people out there who still believe that they can reform or vote their way into purifying that system. Not a chance. Our Bushy cabinet said that burning asbestos was safe to breathe in New York back on 9/11, and 9/12, and 9/13. And the former governor of Jersey appointed to Secretary of House and Home Security. Oh. Let me hold on one moment. I'm about to... All right, we back now. Funny things. That was a random, unexpected phone call, but hey, I felt it was important enough to answer real quick. And we'll continue talking later on. But for now, it's time to continue on with the show. And I think I'm now going to get into the article that Alan McLeod posted on Friday. He's part of Mint Press, does very exceptional work there. And if you don't follow Alan McLeod on Twitter, you absolutely should, because he breaks a lot of good stories, including this one, showing the amount of people in Hollywood that are working with Israel to defend its war crimes. As Israel was launching a deadly assault on Gaza, killing thousands of citizens and displacing more than 100,000 people, many of America's top music, TV, and film producers were organizing to protect the apartheid state's reputation from widespread international condemnation. Together, the Sony Archive, a cache of emails published by WikiLeaks, prove that influential entertainment magnates attempted to whitewash Israel's crimes and present the situation as defending itself from an impending genocide, liaised with Israeli military and government officials in order to coordinate their message, attempted to cancel those who spoke out against the justice, put financial and social pressure on institutions who hosted artists criticizing the apartheid government's actions. As Israel attacks, Hollywood plays defense. Israel's message must be repeated ad infinitum until people get it, wrote Hollywood lawyer and producer Glenn D. Feig in an email chain to many of Tinseltown's most influential executives. This was in response to the unprovoked 2014 Israeli attack on Gaza, one of the bloodiest chapters in over a half-century of occupation. Named Operation Protective Edge, the Israeli military engaged in 7 weeks of near constant bombing of the densely populated coastal strip. According to the United Nations, over 2,000 people were killed, a quarter of them were children, 18,000 homes were destroyed, leaving more than 100,000 people homeless. And this right here is an example of the email. As you can see right here, that's a lot to read in itself. As you can see right here, Israel is a very influential force in I see you. You're good, Mariella. The major influence in Hollywood and Israel's connection. Even though I remember last year there was a pretty big list of pro-Palestine celebrities, that pales in comparison to the amount of pro-Israel voices that are involved in the entertainment industry. Now let's go to this next paragraph. Change must start from the top down. It should be unheard of and unacceptable for any Academy Award-winning actor to call the armed defense of one's territory genocide. He continued, worrying that the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement, a worldwide campaign to put economic pressure on Israel in an attempt to push it to meet its obligations under international law, was gaining steam in the middle of arts. Israel's legitimacy rests upon political and military support from the United States. Therefore, maintaining support among the American public is critical to the long-term viability of its settler colonial project. And I know that Nate Silver posted a poll yesterday, I believe, and it's showing that among younger people in Gen X, millennials like myself and Gen Z, that support is growing for Palestine. And that is a good sign that people are starting to see right through this cover up and propaganda in favor of Israel that we've grown so accustomed to. Let's see, scrolling down to the Russell Simmons part next, because I know that that's the one person that people are probably going to be most familiar with in the article. Let's start here. The pro-Israel group in Hollywood also put serious pressure on American institutions to crack down on support for Palestinian human rights. Silverman revealed that he had written to Peter Gelb, the general manager of the New York Metropolitan Opera, in an effort to shut down a performance of The Death of Klinghoffer, an opera that tells the story of the 1985 hijacking of an airliner by the Palestine Liberation Front. I suggest we call him on Monday at this office at the Met, and your point about the Met Stoner's leverage is important. He advised the other entertainment oligarchs, thereby shining a light on how powerful move in secret to silence speech they do not approve of, and how they use their financial clout to coerce and strong arm others into towing their line. A lot of pressure was necessary, because as Silverman explained, as members of the artistic community, it's very hard to be pro-speech only some of the time and not all the time. Then, as we can see, this is a paragraph right here going into the ties of the IDF. And for those of you who don't know, the current Wonder Woman Gal Gadot was a former Israeli defense fighter. So it's also irony of using the current Wonder Woman as a fighter, especially when it comes to being pro-choice. Ooh, now there's a familiar celebrity for some of us. As you can see, Fran Drescher, who I'm always tempted to say Drescher, was part of a IDF event. And here's a surprising one here. The group also attempted to recruit Israeli-American movie star Natalie Portman into the ranks, but the Academy Award-winning actress appeared more concerned her personal details were being shared. How did I get on this list? Also, Seacrest, before directly addressing Kavanaugh, can you please remove me from the list? Then, while Portman's open contempt for the group of rapidly pro-Israel producers is notable. More so was Kavanaugh's response, which revealed how close the connection was between the Israeli state and Hollywood. So, yes, it was very surprising that Natalie Portman has turned out to be one of the more vocal pro-Palestine voices we have among Hollywood, given that she is Israeli. But it also goes to show you that there are also Israelis that are against the apartheid state that they're and the colonization of Palestine. We don't get to hear about those voices enough because, as we know, it's very lazy to just smear people who are against this as being anti-Semitic when the Palestinians are Semitic people. And I think this is now the most interesting part. While their efforts at recruiting Portman fell flat, one star who responded enthusiastically was hip-hop mega producer Russell Simmons, founder of Def Jam Records and the brother of Joseph Rev Run Simmons, one-third of Run DMC. Simmons has been the subject of controversy after 20 women have come forward charging him with rape or other sexual misconduct. But as you can see, you notice that the if you're part of the protected class, things move very slowly on that. As you notice that Harvey Weinstein was also a very pro-Israeli person. The email reveals that promoting engagement with Israel within the African American community is one of Simmons' primary interests. When asked if he had any ideas of how to improve Israel's image, he said, simple messaging from non-Jews, specifically from Muslims, promoting peace and Israel's right to exist. We have resources and desire to win rather than lose the hearts of young Muslims and Jews. But the thing is, that hasn't really worked out well. As you can see here, maybe this is why someone like a Richie Torres is such a extremely pro Israel voice, and how he did the quickest flip from being a progressive fraud even than someone like Jamal Bowman. As you can see here, recently the Overton window has finally started to shift against Israel. And I think, as I said, I was about to say that part. Much of this has to do with the growth of social media and activists highlighting the injustices being carried out, which has definitely helped move the newer generations, such as the and millennials, into a better position here. And it goes to show you, which is not surprising in the least bit, how deep the ties of Israel and Hollywood are, and that you really do have to have some conviction to be able to stand up against the apartheid state of Israel. I didn't want to get too reedy on that article and just highlight the important parts, but I think I did pretty good with that on the fly. So let's go into a story in the sports world that has gotten a lot of attention over the past few days, and that is with Boston Celtics head coach Ime Udoka being caught up in having a sexual relations with a staff member. So let's give this page a little quick reload, and I think I'm going to find an article while I do this. That way we can get the basic details across. So I think I'm going to do that first. As y'all know, this ultimately led to Ime Udoka being suspended for a year. And it's also, in addition to that, led to the possibility of Ime Udoka also potentially losing his job altogether. So I want to get one of the articles from either Woj or Shams that will go over with some of the basic details here. But it's I want to make sure this Shams article isn't stuck behind the paywall before I do it. And yes, it is stuck behind the paywall. But so I think I'm just going to grab the TMZ. So let's go through the article first, then we'll go through the Twitters afterwards. And we'll also try to work in a bit of NBA media stuff that was related to like issues that went beyond basketball. So the Celtics employee who Ime Udoka had an affair with helped make all his travel arrangements. That job sometimes included organizing travel for his fiancée Nia Long. Sources connected to the couple and the NBA franchise tell TMZ one of the staffer's duties included planning Udoka's team-related travel. We're told she was also involved in booking travel for Nia to come along to Boston or to road games. Perhaps most upsetting for Nia is that the employee had a hand in Nia's arrangements to move to Boston permanently, according to our sources. TMZ broke the story Nia had just moved east a little over 2 weeks ago with Kez, her 10-year-old son with Ime. The Celtics are not releasing the name of the employee, but we're told that Nia has been told who she is. Team president Brad Stevens got choked up Friday during the news conference, saying the scandal had been particularly upsetting for all their female employees due to the speculation about who the affair had been with. As we've reported, the team suspended its head coach for the entire 2022-2023 season after what it says was months-long investigation into his conduct. So that's the simple, basic gist of it right there. And as you'll notice, this story has gained way more attention in the news compared to Brett Favre. We've got way more outrage and energy being put towards this when we do not fully know the details of stuff like whether this was a consensual relationship, whether Nia was aware of this and okay with it. So many layers of the stuff that we don't fully know yet. And RG3 has this right. You're more upset about Ime Udoka and the Celtics situation than Brett Favre stealing millions in welfare money from the poorest people in our country, Mississippi, then you are part of the problem. And I'm going to tie that in, and that's an important point to make here as well. And it's unfortunate that speculation had caused a lot of females on that staff to be speculated as the possible woman that Ime had affairs with. So let's play this video real quick from Celtics Media Day.
And before we get into that, I do want to address just some things that have transpired over the last few days. And I mean, I give you so much credit for what you had come out and said. But I think I'd be doing everyone and every female in the Celtics organization a disservice if I didn't step up on this. The last few days have been very hard in terms of emotions, ranging not only from heartbreak, sadness, defeat at sometimes, and anger and humiliation. Social media felt that it was completely fine to take innocent people's names in our organization and their personal photos and put them out there for speculation. That damages careers, that damages reputations. And every woman in this organization has worked extremely hard to get where she is at, and she deserves and has earned everything that she has right now. I'm saying for things in the Celtics and what we're doing moving forward, things do need to change. You need to stand up, support us, and hear us. And before we get into that, I do want to address just some things that have.
Keeps playing. Let's go. As you can see, most of the players on the roster don't even fully know the details of all this.
Your reaction in the last 48, 72 hours, have you spoken with your former coach? How do you move forward? What's going through your head?
I guess I feel like everybody else, it's a lot to process. Unexpected, especially right coming into this season, and you feel a certain way that coming up last year that you're excited and trying to do all these things, and just a lot, if I'm being honest. And I guess along with everybody else is still trying to process it all, knowing that, we start practice tomorrow.
Exactly. That's a good point, Duncan. The way that they're hyping up this Ime Udoka situation, you think he stole $5 million in welfare funds from Mississippi. And I'm not going to play this video because I'm not going to legitimize Matt Barnes' speculation, but he thinks that there is further speculation that is legitimate, but I don't view Matt Barnes as a trustworthy source to let that play through in this situation. And there was a good clip from First Take real quick that I think that I'm going to work in. Between Malika Andrews and Stephen A. Smith. Yeah, let's get this up now to continue on. Hey, WCSN, that's actually one of my favorite books ever. Also a pretty good movie as well, Hoop Dreams. And yes, I did hope to play basketball professionally, but when you're only 5'7", that kind of takes away, and you don't have like 99.9% athleticism, or at least 99.8%, then that pretty much takes you out of having a real potential there. So go.
Let me be very clear. I don't appreciate where you're going with that. I'm not blaming anybody but Ime Udoka. He deserves, the fact of the matter is, I said he deserved to be fired if they were going to fire him. If you're not going to fire him, then don't fire him. My issue is all of this being publicized. The point that I'm trying to make is just like you're not mentioning, excuse me, I listened to you. You're the one telling me to stop on my show. It ain't happening. Okay, that's number one. Number two, I've already said he deserves to be fired or he deserves to be there and handle it internally and privately. If you're not going to handle it privately, if you're going to publicize it in that fashion, then obviously it provokes everybody wanting to know, okay, well, who are the parties involved? When you have Amina Smith in Boston and other women pointing out the fact that there were women who were wrongly implicated in all of this, it's a disservice to them. I didn't come out with the report about a consensual relationship. I didn't come out with the report ahead of time leaking that they were going to suspend him for the year. They did that. And my point is, considering how pervasive this kind of stuff has existed in professional sports for many years, my whole point is that, excuse me, make sure that you handle it in the same fashion it has always been handled. You could have fired him, and then we could have speculated till the cows come home, but he's gone. But to keep him there, keep him employed, but in the same breath, suspend him for a year, then also that year is indefinite. That is the issue that I have. Nobody's trying to protect Ime Udoka, and certainly nobody is trying to protect, is to excoriate the women involved or anything like that. I'm talking about how things of this matter are usually handled from an HR perspective, from an organizational perspective. That is not consistent with what we have seen throughout the years. That is the only point that I was trying to make. I'm not trying to attack anybody, and if anybody deserves to be attacked, it's Ime Udoka for putting himself in this position. I've made that very clear. I'm just talking about you got owners and everybody else. They know the kind of stuff that's going on. You didn't say anything about anybody else. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about them. They didn't say anything about everybody else all the other times this stuff has happened. But now when it comes to him, it's all over the place. That is my issue. That is my only issue. Let me be very clear. I don't appreciate.
I think overall that was a pretty solid response from Stephen A. Smith in that moment. You just need to use those elbows out getting caught, pretty much. And I think that the thing that really did him in was the fact that he pretty much that's the complicated part here. You're trying to mix in working relationships. That can be a very tricky, tough thing to do. And guess what? If the woman that he was with did not work for the Celtics, then this is very much a different story. But in also more of a complicated one as well, because what we do know is that many athletes and entertainers do not tend to be monogamous people. Whether it's the lifestyle of the industry, or if it's something that it's genuinely against what they want to do, so to speak. There's not very many like openly polyamorous celebrities, but the point is, these are all gray issues, and well, there's more people putting him on the hot seat for breaking an organizational rule than there are people placing Brett Favre under fire for the way that he took away money, was influential in pulling money away from Mississippians on welfare who need that, so his daughter could play on a brand new volleyball court. That's the issue right here. They're blowing up another celebritized dating gossip thing, and it's turning into It's getting certain people caught up and distracted over things that have actual effects on people, like the new water crisis developed that just got recently reported on in Chicago. And that is, in a way, what these stories take away from, in addition to all those layers of the complicated stuff that I had laid out. But someone else weighed in on this, a squad member, by the way. Oh, Jamal Bowman, a guy who has not done anything but go along to go along from the moment he took Congress last year, sending nothing but love to Nia Long. We're not letting a man who didn't recognize the luxury her presence was dim all her beauty and glory. Matter of fact, we need a Nia Long national holiday. So this is another moment of Jamal Bowman, by the way. They called him thirsty for this. I'm not disputing that. But once again, this tells you how much the priorities of the so-called progressives are at. This guy, what are the type of shots Jamal Bowman takes when he's in? The ones where he is like 10 or more feet open? And these are cheap, easy shots for him to make. A lot like that like hip-hop holiday thing that he got past. The only things that you could really tie to his name and being influential on are very, very symbolic. And this is a symbolic tweet squad tweet right here if I've seen one. Because Jamal Bowman is not going to take any real tough contested shots in Congress. I mean, the man can barely pretend to take some tough contested shots at Republicans, let alone do those at the Democratic establishment that he was sent there to do for in the first place, the mission that a lot of the reformist left still believes in. Then there's also the whole layer of assuming things again, like with the personal relationship agreements between Naya and Ime, that people, this is such a mono propagandized society that you assume that someone like Naya should be good enough to where you don't need another relationship, and that's up to Ime and Naya to agree to or not. And we don't even know if that's okay with them either. So this is another issue that you're seeing play out, is the fact that people could be misrepresenting an affair, but chances are we'll know that in due time with the way that certain people's like personal laundry gets aired out. And Jamal Bowman had to make a response tweet following the whole shooting his shot type thing. Dear Twitter, I don't need to shoot shots. I'm good, homie. And that just goes to show you how certain members of Congress build their brand on just tweeting about stuff in terms of like what happens in sports and the entertainment world. And that's where you see a guy like Jamal Bowman is at right now. Not even pretending to do what a Tweet Squad member should do, like stuff like what can Medicare for All do for you? What could a living wage do for you? I mean, at least even though Nina Turner's never going to break into the Democratic Party, she still stays more true to that mission. And there's Jamal Bowman who doesn't really stay true to that when it's all said and done. But I think that's going to be a good stopping point for the show tonight. I thought I was going to just react to a couple of the NBA Media Day quotes, but I've decided that I don't really need. I could just leave that off for this show and just move on. And with that being said, if you're on right now, please like the stream, click the subscribe button. That'd be very nice. And share it to new people. If you're on the Twitch side, also click follow button. Be sure to click the link tree link in the description below and get yourselves connected to me on as many platforms as possible. Yes, that right there is very true. WCSN, if they're willing to run Dem, you know they're already corrupt as fuck. Just saying. Yep. And y'all know how this goes. I've got a couple things already in mind to cover on Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern, such as the Edward Snowden is one example. Oh, yes. That was kind of my bad, Kelly, because I thought I was doing the show last night, but then I felt a bit under the weather. Then I decided within about an hour before I was going live, yep, I'll just do it tonight. After I saw Uncle Warren share the link to the show, I was like, fuck it, I'll do it. So that's how it happened tonight. But Wednesday, 9 p.m. Eastern will be the next one. And yes, I will at least make sure that will be the minimum commitment for me, a Wednesday night show. Yeah, thanks for the love, Kelly. You and your dogs and family as well. Be well as well, WCSN. And a high four given to her. And remember, take the shit off the internet and bump it outside. And we keeping it live. This is Andrew Rochford saying goodbye and good night.